November 1973, San Rafael, California, a picturesque community north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Families enjoyed the quiet streets, safe neighborhoods, and the optimism of a new decade. But behind one closed door, tragedy struck. Nadine Fischer, a 31-year-old mother and wife, was brutally murdered in her home. Her husband discovered her body, their 2-year-old child left alive in another room. The crime was shocking, violent, and, worst of all, unsolved. More than half a century later, in 2025, the case was finally solved. This is the full story of how science, persistence, and justice came together to close one of California's oldest cold cases. Nadine Fischer wasn't famous, wealthy, or politically connected. She was an ordinary woman living in Marin County, raising a young child with her husband. Described by friends as cheerful, grounded, and nurturing, she embodied the American dream of family life in the suburbs. Her murder wasn't just the loss of a life. It was the destruction of a family's future and the beginning of a mystery that would span generations. On the night of November 11, 1973, Nadine's husband returned home to a nightmare. Nadine had been sexually assaulted and shot 3 times. Their toddler child, just 2 years old, was found unharmed but alone in another room. Police quickly arrived on the scene. Detectives found signs of forced entry and recovered biological evidence. But in 1973, there was little they could do with it. Fingerprint analysis and eyewitness testimony were still the main tools of law enforcement. Without solid leads, the case began to stall. The murder rattled San Rafael. Violent crime in suburban communities was rare, and many residents began locking doors for the first time. Local newspapers covered the case, but with no arrests or suspects, the story eventually slipped out of the headlines. For Nadine's family, the silence was unbearable. A young child grew up without answers, without closure, and with only painful memories of that night. Detectives worked tirelessly in the months after the murder. They interviewed neighbors, questioned acquaintances, and developed theories. But without witnesses, without cameras, and without DNA analysis, the evidence never led to a suspect. The case was filed as cold. It sat in storage, gathering dust for decades, but never forgotten. In the 1980s and 90s, forensic science underwent a revolution. DNA profiling emerged as the most powerful tool in criminal justice. Suddenly, old biological evidence could provide new answers. In California, the Department of Justice developed the familial search program. Instead of looking for exact DNA matches, it searches for potential relatives of an unknown suspect, parents, children, or cousins, creating investigative leads that would have been impossible decades earlier. In 2024, investigators reopened Nadine Fischer's file. Preserved biological evidence was retested using modern technology, and this time, it produced a lead. The DNA pointed to a man living in Marin County, Idaho. His name, Michael Eugene Mullen, age 75. Back in the 1970s, Mullen had lived in the San Rafael area. He had avoided suspicion at the time, but the evidence never forgot him. Authorities arrested Mullen in early 2025. The 75-year-old appeared stunned. After more than 5 decades, he was finally facing justice for the murder of Nadine Fischer. Prosecutors announced that Mullen would be extradited to California, where he faces charges of murder and sexual assault. The arrest shocked neighbors in Idaho, many of whom described him as quiet and unremarkable. For Nadine's surviving relatives, the news was bittersweet. After 51 years, they finally had answers. But no conviction could bring Nadine back or erase the decades of pain. They thanked investigators for never giving up, and they reminded the public that behind every cold case file is a family still waiting for justice. The Fischer case is part of a growing wave of cold cases being solved with DNA genealogy. The most famous, the Golden State Killer, arrested in 2018 after terrorizing California in the 1970s and 80s. Across the U.S., dozens of long-forgotten victims are finally having their stories told. But these breakthroughs also raise ethical questions. Should genetic genealogy databases, often created by private companies, be used by police? Do the benefits of solving murders outweigh the concerns about privacy? These debates will continue as technology advances. Mullen's arrest is only the beginning. His defense may challenge the use of DNA evidence, question the chain of custody, or argue against the reliability of genetic genealogy. But prosecutors believe their case is strong, and if convicted, Mullen will spend the rest of his life in prison. For 51 years, the murder of Nadine Fischer haunted her family, her community, and investigators who never gave up. With one arrest, the silence has been broken. Justice delayed, but not denied. This is more than a solved case. It's proof that truth has no expiration date, and that even after half a century, justice can still be served. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dive true crime documentaries, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, every cold case is more than a file. It's a life, a family, and a story waiting to be told.